Happy Saturday, Risers. Saagar and I are back to revisit some of our favorite interviews from this week. We spoke with The Intercept's Glenn Greenwald about the impeachment hearings. We talked to Fox News political reporter Paul Steinhauser about the latest in New Hampshire. And, of course, we had some incredible conversations during our live debate coverage on Wednesday night. Always so much fun.
It was amazing. And speaking of the Democratic debate, we thought that we'd take you back to Atlanta with our conversation with the Young Turks Cenk Uygur. We talked to him about his expectations for Wednesday night, as well as his recently announced congressional campaign in California's 25th district. But one thing I wanted to highlight was his insight into the rise of Andrew Yang and his appeal to voters. Let's take a listen.
What Washington doesn't understand is that people don't like them. I'm just keeping it real. The polling shows that people don't like the establishment. They don't like regular politicians. And so they keep looking at Andrew like, oh my God, like almost like, how dare he? Does he not know that you have to be an esteemed politician that people in Washington respect? No, people hate that. So when they see Andrew, they see a real guy, a smart guy, and someone fighting for them in his own way.
I love Cenk's esteemed politician voice.
Politician. I love that.
He's so right. And we've covered on this show how much Andrew and Tulsi and Bernie get crossover support. And it's funny because pundits are always, you've got to win over these moderates, you got to win over these Obama, Trump voters, et cetera. And then you're like, okay, here are the three candidates that do. And they're like, no, not them. They're doing it the wrong way. The other thing I always hear is with Bernie Sanders, well, he's not even a Democrat. I'm like, that's exactly why people like him. That's the whole point.
12% crossover support.
Highest favorability numbers of any of the candidates because people don't love the Democratic Party. That's just the reality.
Sorry, guys.
We also talked to College Pulse CEO Terren Klein. He broke down their latest survey of college students for us. He also explained how college-age voters should not be overlooked by pollsters. Check it out.
In New Hampshire, there are more psychology majors at University of New Hampshire than the number of voters that had separated the general election in 2016. In Pennsylvania, another state that, just last week, the Siena and New York Times poll suggests is going to be very competitive. There's 150 colleges and universities. So to overlook college students as not as an unimportant demographic in this population, in this upcoming election, would be a mistake and likely cause us to be very surprised when the actual votes come in.
Always love talking to Terren.
Yeah, he does a great job.
The real thing is that he's got the best data. Is that, that election tracker, being able to really look. We focus a lot here on the future, the next generation. This really is what's shaping the entire country. And this just goes to show you that people who are younger do not want mealy-mouthed, like Joe Biden, centrist neoliberalism. They are done forever. And that is just something Washington has not woken up to. They got little glimpses of it with Trump, but it's the youngins. The youngins are very fed up with the entire system.
Completely.
And it's a great thing.
And they're voting on values, not some BS notion of electability, which is completely debunked at this point anyway. I remember back in 2016 when Sanders was first on the rise, New York Times did this piece that now in retrospect looks absurd about how the only people supporting him were people his own age.
Oh, right.
Because there's just was so little understanding. I think this persists to this day of younger generations and the way that they actually approach politics. You see this time around with Pete Buttigieg. There's this fiction that because he talks about generational change, whatever that means, but he's like the same old wrapped in a younger man's patina, that he would be the one to appeal to young folks. Well, that's actually not the case. His strongest support consistently, poll after poll, is with boomers. So, there's such a misunderstanding in the media typically about what younger generations want, and so we love getting Terren's data because he's one of the only people that's out there really digging deep into what college students today want in candidates, what issues they're focused on.
He really is great. All right. Finally, we wanted to return to our conversation with Adolph Reid Jr. We talked to the Professor Reid about recent remarks by President Obama that the progressive base of the Democratic Party is too far to the left. And we also discussed his views on centrism in the Democratic Party and why he thinks Bernie Sanders is the strongest candidate in this primary.
So the centrist Democratic elites now are convinced that the issue is who's electable, right? And they contend that Bernie couldn't win when there's no one else in this race who's actually appealing to popular concerns among working people. No one else gets the response that he gets. And so I guess the hidden clause, and they probably hide it from themselves, is that he couldn't win, the kind of couldn't win a Wall Street presidency, right? But the beauty of it is that since 1865, and especially 1965, the rest of us get to vote too.
Couldn't win a Wall Street presidency. I love that comment.
Well said. Adolph Reid Jr., really interesting. I mean, he's been one of the original leftists. It was really important to hear him about President Obama, I think, in particular, and just about, neoliberalism and centrism. His diagnosis of the whole thing, even from the right, I just totally agree with it.
Well, he was years and years ahead of the curve in predicting exactly how it would go with Obama. Because, look, if you looked at how much money he got from Wall Street, and this is what he pointed out, you could have known how it was going to go. But he also had the grassroots, and the media loved to focus on the grassroots, but it was exciting, it was trailblazing. He had this sort of aspirational but vague enough vision that you could fill in the blanks. He ran this sort of populist way that you thought this was a real movement. And then what does he do? As soon as he's elected, he says, "Thank you very much for getting me here. Let me bring in the Goldman Sachs
like,
guys.
Larry,
We've got it from here."
Where are you, Larry Summers?
Adolph Reid Jr. was one of the few people who called that from the jump before everybody else caught out. So give him a lot of credit for that. All right, that does it for us. Be sure to check back here later today for our weekly recap of media screw-ups. There were some really good ones this week.
And come back tomorrow for another round of Rising Qs. The Hill's editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack, is going to join us. You're not going to want to miss that, and we will see you then.